is a war. It's happening now. It will decide the fate of humanity. The time to choose sides has come. We are the resistance. We are the info war. There was a national science board study that was put out Friday showing that 1 out of 4 Americans do not know that the Earth circles the sun. They thought the sun circled the Earth. Of course, it's been known since the days of Copernicus and Galileo that it was the Earth circling the sun. Over a quarter of Americans do not know the Earth circles the sun, according to the new survey. So there you go. They've known since 1543. I mean, they knew hundreds of years before that, or even 1,000, but they would kill you, burn you at the stake, heresy. Just like if you say Obamacare raised your rates, even though it did, or you lost your doctor, it's racist blasphemy to talk bad about Obama lying to you. So Obamacare did lower the price of your health care to that of a phone bill, even though on average it's doubled it and is set to triple and quadruple. No. If Obama said that the laws of gravity were suspended, it would happen. Or you're a racist. Now, getting serious here, ladies and gentlemen, the only reason they can get away with what they're doing across the board is there's really not 2 parties in this country. You've got the Republican leadership on record giving more money to candidates who are running against Tea Party candidates than they are to defeat Democrats. And that's been in the news the last few months. It's on record. We've got all the big associations, all the big business associations lobbying for Tea Party candidates that are just common sense to be defeated. They don't want a real opposition. They don't want 2 parties. They don't want a libertarian constitutional type group to take over the Republicans, which is starting to happen. It's very frustrating to see this group, the Tea Party, who isn't perfect by any stretch and is very diverse, having a real shot at turning things around for this country and, by extension, the world. And to see the whole system, Republican, Democratic leadership, the controlled press, state-run media, combines, going after the Tea Party. Obviously, those are the good guys. If you have 6% approval rating for Congress, if you've got 20-something for Obama in many polls, if you've got the support for this system at the lowest it's ever been in history, the government violating the Bill of Rights and Constitution from pillar to post, then obviously the group being attacked by the establishment 24/7 is the real opposition. And we should take it over. We already pretty much started it, but we should continue to take it over, continue to keep it somewhat free, nothing's perfect, and continue to make inroads with common sense into government. Now, that said, and this ties into the huge news we're about to break here on air, do you know in literally hundreds of public Army manuals in the last 5 years and hundreds of Homeland Security briefing reports given to state police that we've broken and they've been national news, this is all on record, that the #1 enemy going back almost 6 years behind the scenes that they were training for is gun owners, returning veterans, conservatives, libertarians, constitutionalists, Bob Barr supporters, Ron Paul supporters, Alex Jones supporters, get us out of the UN supporters, anybody that doesn't want this country fully gutted by offshore criminals. And notice Obamacare is incredibly unpopular. Almost 80% in National Gallup polls are against it. Last one I saw was 79% were against it. You can pull that up. 79% against Obamacare. In fact, guys, just put that into a search engine. I want to show people that. Some polls are even higher. The point is 79%. So are we all extremists because we don't like it? The truth is we're the real opposition. We're the common sense. What we're saying is popular. That's why secretly in all these training manuals and all these memos and all these military training operations and police training operations and joint operations that violated posse comitatus and a whole string of other federal laws barring domestic military engaging in police activities, like a third world country or North Korea. I mean, the Revolutionary War started over troops on the streets, taking guns. And the difference is now they've gone from having that secret to having it public. And putting out via the Army PR news release department, we have a video, oh, the mock city, and they told newspapers, oh, it's for overseas, it's all part of lying in our face. It's the D.C. subway. It's all in English. It's 10-story buildings. It's 300 acres. And they're training for gun confiscation. You can clearly watch the videos. And it's all over the Army Times and Stars and Stripes the last 3 or 4 years. They're doing that. But in the PSYOP, the military's saying, you know, don't run, we're your friends. This is for overseas. And even the papers, and I'm going to read this, said, oh, you know, it's even got a mosque, and it's a Baptist church with Gothic windows, stained glass, and a steeple. And you say, why would they lie like that? Because they've been ordered to. And in a real PSYOP, you lie on purpose to condition people to just accept lies. This is very sophisticated. Remember 4 months ago, the Pentagon came out with an hour-long press briefing that we played clips of with the Deputy Secretary of the Department of Defense. And they said, look, the public doesn't buy our psych warfare anymore. We've got to start telling the truth, A. B, we've got to go out and engage the public. Now, that was another lie. Going out and engaging the public is buying off the blogs, infiltrating, dirty tricks. And this is going on, by the way. And starting infighting and disinfo. And I want to be clear. In any country, whether the country falls to tyranny or stands up against it, the military and then the police are the key sector. We're not criticizing the military here to bring this up any more than we criticize the German military saying don't follow Hitler in 1933. But when you become willing servants of an offshore crime cartel, it's a serious issue. So I wanted to go over a special report David Knight filed Friday night for InfoWars Nightly News that is particularly powerful. It's up on Infowars.com if you want to actually see all this. But for radio listeners, I'm going to air it. DrudgeReport.com, link to it Friday. It caused a big buzz. I went to a doctor's office today because I got a serious cold. And they all came back and kind of got around me and said, you know, a lot of us are former military and we know what's happening. And this is really dangerous. And we saw that report. And that's clearly an American city. And, well, yeah, the fact is the military is actually in all their training manuals saying the #1 threat is, quote, the Tea Party. That's even been in Washington Times, Forbes, Associated Press. Again, years after I told you. And people say, some say, well, Alex, why, you know, did you tell us about this 15, 16 years ago? But, you know, it's here now, but what's the problem? Well, I saw it a long way off. I knew it was illegal when they were doing secret military gun confiscation, real operations from South Carolina to Texas. And I was interviewing Marine Corps captains and others off record. And I was going to their houses with their uniforms, you know, with the hanging in the closet, the whole 9 yards. They were showing me all this. They were explaining how illegal it was. So I was telling you it was a covert, very small operation. It's, let's not exaggerate, it's about 1,000 times bigger now.
The globalists have controlled the mainstream media for a long time, but now they're expanding, making the weaponization even more vicious and deceptive. All the major networks are state-run.
We are partnering this year with the NFL.
The NFL has become a political weapon against the Second Amendment and pushes Obamacare. MSNBC tells us that our children belong to the state.
We have to break through our kind of private idea that kids belong to their parents or kids belong to their families and recognize that kids belong to whole communities.
The brainwashing media machine has been turned up on high, and it's time for humanity to double down on the true people's media and strike back against the tyrants that are destroying our civilization with their lies and fraud. We are the resistance. You are the resistance. You are the info war. It is more important than ever to realize that we are not the alternative media. We are the true media. The establishment dinosaur press is dying.
We are in an information war, and we are losing that war.
Join us at InfoWarsNews.com and PrisonPlanet.tv. Members can share their memberships with up to 11 people. By subscribing, you will literally be buying war bonds in the info war to expand our operation in the face of the tyrants. Join us at PrisonPlanet.tv.
If you know basic history, you know having militarized police, military on the streets, checkpoints, databases, that you're in a very dangerous, oppressive country. And capital controls are being set up, domestic checkpoints are being set up. They're going down the list and consciously putting a very serious police-state grid in place, not just here, but in every major industrialized world, to convert us to the Agenda 21 system of total government and corporate control. And you've got hundreds of trucks every few months, giant armored vehicles from Iraq being deployed and delivered to police everywhere. You've got them training. I've got their manuals here. We have articles up on Infowars.com right now with links to the Army's own website where they talk about how they're going to put us in re-education camps. They use the Soviet term. Now they're going to process our Social Security numbers. Remember Katrina? They went and took the guns. And it's not that the military itself's bad. It's that it's being used for this. And so there's a cultural battle. If we cry out against this and say, hey, we need to do something about this, we need to reverse this, this is a serious situation, then we can reverse it. But if the trolls, who are paid for in most cases, go, there's big deal, there's armored vehicles. Big deal, they're training in mock U.S. cities for gun confiscations. They may need it. People are on Infowars.com, minority of them, and on Fox News and others that picked up this story, going, well, hey, the Tea Party might try to take over. Thank God they're doing this. So the attitude is, see, this is the new enemy, not Al-Qaeda. Homeland Security has said publicly for 3 years the new enemy is domestic terrorism, and the main enemy there is libertarians, conservatives, gun owners. David Knight, you did a video report for the Nightly News Friday on this. We're about to play that and then get into more detail here, but we sit here reading it all. I mean, here it was from last Monday, WSAZ television, where it said, quote, Homeland Security with the military trained for gun owners attacking schools with bioweapons because they're for the Second Amendment. That's just pure scripting that we're the terrorist.
That's right.
I mean, this is so obvious.
You know, when we were covering the military drills in all these various cities, in one of them, I believe it was in Los Angeles, they got a military spokesperson on, and he said, you know, you train for the scenario you think you're going to be operating in. He said, if you train for a mountain, if you think you're going to be in the mountains, you train in the mountains. If you think you're going to be in the ocean, you train in the ocean. And he was saying that in front of a drill where they were going to be working with the police and first responders, fire department, that sort of thing, in a very domestic situation. And so we said, well, if they're going to go into Iran, are they going to have the cooperation of the police there? Or are they going to have the cooperation of the...
Well, I mean, here's the deal. We had the documents back in the late 90s. There is a covert program with military already being used all over the U.S. The Posse Comitatus is gone. They just want to play like this isn't happening and there isn't a huge buildup. And again, gun owners, the Tea Party, people that don't want to bankrupt the country, people that don't want their kids being taught how to masturbate at age 5. We are literally listed as the terrorist is the issue. And they keep playing this game like, oh, no, none of this is going on. Let's go ahead and go to your report. But see, that's the PSYOP. They deny it, even though it's in all their manuals. Yes. And then we make a debate about, oh, whether it's happening or not, instead of why is it happening? What are they getting ready for? Here's David Knight's report.
The Army is very proud of the new American city they've built to practice martial law. The government really can do something quickly. They built this 300-acre city in just 2 years. Compare that to how long they take in your city just to build a road. But then they did have $96 million of your tax money to play with.
To transition from an army of execution, doing what we've got to do, to an army of preparation to be ready for what comes next. This is a place where we can be creative and you can come up with solutions for problems that we don't even know we have yet.
The public may not know the problem yet because they haven't yet executed the false flag event that they'll use to openly activate martial law, but the military has been creating scenarios where they can justify a move against small-town America for quite some time. And they've made it clear that their enemy is gun owners, veterans, those who want a small, limited government, and Christians. The UK Telegraph reported that the town was complete with a subway, railroad, football field, and mosque. Mosque? That's not a mosque. That's a small-town Christian church
with crosses,
a steeple and Gothic windows. Mosques have minarets, rounded arches, etc. It's not that they've kept the current military's attitude toward Christians a secret.
That's how dumb they think
it was the U.S. Army that conflated the Ku Klux Klan with mainstream Christian groups like the American Family Association or the Family Research Council, calling these mainstream evangelical groups hate groups. In just the last year, an official Army email and briefings at both Fort Hood, Texas and Camp Shelby, Mississippi attacked Christian groups and said they don't share Army values. Most recently, we've seen a FOIA request that showed last year's training scenario in Ohio identified gun owners and people who believe in limited government as the enemy. And then there's retired Colonel Kevin Benson, currently teaching at Fort Leavenworth, who spelled it out clearly in his vision of the future. When the leaders of the group hold a press conference to announce their goals, they invoke the Declaration of Independence, and they argue that the current form of the federal government is not deriving its just powers from the consent of the governed, but is actually destructive to these ends.
6% proven.
Therefore, they say the people can alter or abolish the existing government and replace it with another. And while mainstream politicians and citizens react with alarm, to the words of the Declaration of Independence, the Tea Party insurrectionists in South Carolina enjoy a groundswell of support from other Tea Party groups, militias, racist organizations like the Ku Klux Klan. And as we've shown you many times in the past, U.S. military documents describing CONUS operations, that's the continental United States, where rules regarding the use of deadly force in confronting dissidents are made disturbingly clear with the directive that a warning shot will not be fired. Or this document that talks about policies that would be applied within U.S. territory with the internment, resettlement, indoctrination, and re-education of political dissidents using their social security number. Clearly, it's not for foreign operations. And finally, I think it's significant how detailed these buildings are. They could easily train for foreign urban warfare using concrete shells of buildings which are cheaper, and that's what they've done in the past. But here they have a completely intact American town, down to the Washington, D.C. subway logos, and a small church building. Looks like they're training for a different kind of conflict. President James Madison wrote, "The means of defense against foreign danger have always been the instruments of tyranny at home." But as Alex Jones pointed out in his documentary 9/11, The Road to Tyranny, way back in 2001, FEMA was telling firefighters and other emergency personnel in Kansas that the founding fathers were terrorists.
That's very different. When people are passionate about what they believe in, they become a very difficult enemy to beat. Who was the first terrorist organization in the United States? Who? Founding Fathers. Yeah. Founding Fathers. You mean Thomas Jefferson? Oh, yeah. You mean George Washington? Oh, yeah. Paul Revere? Yeah. These guys right here, let me ask you something. Did they try to scare people? Oh, yeah. They tried to intimidate the British. Did they use acts of violence? Your founding fathers, my founding fathers, were involved in acts of terrorism.
Posse Comitatus, Constitution, that's just yesterday's red tape.
This is the whole collectivist model. You have a political ruling class that literally wants to be in charge with a monopoly of power. And I'll explain to you why this is such a big deal. Why Reuters last Thursday came out and said, oh, look at the EU model. We should do that here where they bail in and take 40% out of your bank account and give it to private banks. We're going to have that here where the government safeguards our 401ks and our IRAs by consolidating them and running them and taking a large piece of them, nationalizing them. That's where all this is going. That's why they're putting the police state in place. That's why they're militarizing the police. That's why they're overthrowing our basic Constitution and Bill of Rights. The Declaration of Independence said he has kept among us, that's the King of England, in times of peace, standing armies without the consent of the legislatures. And that's it. I mean, you know, third world countries have troops on the street. And I can't go to any big event now, I don't care if it's a kite festival or what it is, without military being there searching bags and stuff, as if a terrorist wouldn't just walk up to the checkpoint and blow it up there. And again, I'm not even against the military person out there doing it. They're being conditioned, the public's being conditioned, I'm being conditioned, you're being conditioned to accept this, and it's targeted in all the manuals at folks that basically like Hank Williams Jr., John Wayne. I mean, literally, I've been to the urban warfare drills, I've made 4 films on it. Road to Tyranny, Police State 2000, they're free online. Go look them up. Where I went to the drills, first of anybody. We're talking in some cases 18 years ago. Where they were training, no, I'm an American, I have rights, not the camp. And practicing executing patriots. I mean, I have it on video, and then the Marine Corps colonel runs over and goes, Jones, you're not supposed to be part of this, filming that. Because they let me in to film it, knew who I was. This is out in California in one drill, Urban Warrior 1999. And they were telling the media, it's for overseas. Well, obviously it has a dual use, but they're on tape. I have it on tape going, where'd you get the guns and equipment? In San Francisco. And so your allegiance is to, then the officers run over and say, get him out of here. And they didn't stop us because I already had backup people outside who then said they were just tourists, and they had to give them authorization to let them get the tourist trip, and then they got all the footage. But they're hiding this because it's totally illegal. And now you have the NDAA, all the rest of it. It's very, very serious. David Knight, we have some other fake newscasts they produced last year for Homeland Security that they show police to again, simulate that gun owners are the ones that are going to kill everybody, that gun owners are the ones that are going to launch bioattacks. They had last week, as mainstream news reported, that we mentioned drills where gun owners are going to release bioweapons.
Mm-hmm.
They are the sitcoms, the dramas, the movies. The issue is this used to happen secretly on a very small scale. Now it looks like a full rollout. And what is your take on all this?
Well, we keep seeing it happen over and over again in these scenarios that come out. Over and over again, it's the same.
In almost every case, they're trying to fight Americans.
Absolutely. And if you look back at the NDAA, the thing that concerns everybody when we see this infrastructure tyranny being created, the fact that they would do indefinite detention without trial, be done by the military, and it's put into the defense spending bill, the authorization for that. Now, they also are hearkening to the fact that, well, we have an authorization for the use of military force. So therefore, you know, they see the entire world under this post 9/11 scenario, the entire world.
And again, our military is run by these globalist interests.
That's right. Now, in this video, one of the things that was up there visually that I didn't talk about is I froze a frame there where you could see the handicap parking signs. You mentioned it as you're watching it there. You see handicap parking signs in English. You see speed limit signs. Everything about that is a very detailed American city.
And they admit they're training for that in their own documents, but then lie to the media.
Yes.
Because we're the enemy.
Yes.
It's a psyop.
Yes. And of course, they're also going after these mainline Christian groups like the American Family Association, the Family Research Council.
Last year, Fox News, after we broke it, covered it, and the Army Secretary confirmed, you know, we teach that if you're in an evangelical period, you will be court-martialed and you can give no money to the Tea Party.
And you see over and over again these guys with the high-ranking officials, lieutenant colonels, talking about how these are the enemy. They're going right down the talking points of the Southern Poverty Law.
Oh, we have their local, the PR piece put out by the Army from the Asymmetrical Warfare Center. It's up on Infowars.com in the article. And then radio listeners can actually see the video and the documents and the FM field manuals and all the numbers and links. If you're doubting us, this is so amazing. And you can see right there that they're training for domestic operations and that it's just absolute treason. And then, again, the big question is, why are they training to do this? And why in their own video do they say, well, we're preparing for the next war, the next threat? And it's America. It's us when everything collapses.
Well, we just had a retired colonel that used to teach history at West Point write an article in Esquire saying, yes, we will take the guns out of your cold, dead hands.
That was the headline.
Hopefully, you will be dead of natural causes by then. But he said, hopefully. In other words, if necessary, we'll take them and we'll kill you to take the guns out of your hands. Hopefully, you'll die of natural causes. And see, he's teaching history at the military academy. And that's where he sees the future. You know, when they go into the school.
Yeah, hey, it came out that same week when that broke up, a month ago when that broke, that multiple professors at Texas A&M are teaching that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, this is a total takeover, and they're doing it.
That's right.
I'm now hearing police on the news going, owning firearms is a privilege.
Yes. Yes, and interestingly enough, we see people who are pushing back against this in the courts having victories, just like we had the victory on Thursday in the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, and we've had victories in both Washington and in Chicago. But of course, even when the Supreme Court tells these liberals, because they maintain that the Constitution is a living document, and if the Supreme Court says
they don't follow it,
they still don't follow it.
Because they're not liberals.
Exactly.
They're authoritarians. Well, what would you call these people?
I would call them authoritarians. That's their status. They want to take over everything, have the government run everything. And they're basically a group of criminals who are running the government. They are not going to be held to any law.
And they've got the Republican leadership on their side.
Absolutely.
Let's play this fake newscast produced last year by Homeland Security. This is in the same article, demonizing gun owners. This is the stuff they show police, because there's no real examples of this, so they manufacture it. They have school drills. We've got video of that coming up, where the gun owners come to kill the children because they're, quote, Tea Partiers, and they tell the kids in the drill,
right,
the Tea Partiers are coming to kill you, which is nothing but mind control. This is brainwashing. This is like Jim Jones saying, you know, drink the Kool-Aid when the feds come, or, you won't go to heaven.
They want people to be deathly afraid whenever they see a gun. That's why they'll sometimes allow concealed carry but not open carry. And they want you to be deathly afraid of certain things like anybody labeled as a Tea Partier. That's somebody that's dangerous, or militia. Because
that's such a popular movement now.
Yeah.
And is literally taking over the Republican Party. Let's go to that fake newscast here.
Earlier today, police raided the house and arrested 2 men on charges of illegal possession of firearms. But they apparently found more than they were bargaining for.
Get out of here! Go! Get out of here! Go! Get out of here! Come on! Go, back up! Get back!
So it's all about creating this hysteria and the simulation that gun owners are about to do all this because, folks, clearly this is all being done to then stage events, blame it on us, and then have political persecution. That's why I harp on this. We're going to come back and cover a bunch of other news on the Second Amendment. Time magazine admits fluoride's brain damaging children. I can't believe that. But, I mean, David, this is just crazy. Because us saying have due process, don't have troops on the street, that's just saying be somewhat of a free country. Yeah. This is 101 free country stuff.
Well, they clearly are training for this kind of scenario. I think that was what was going to happen in Boston. And now we see these attacks on these power plants.
You are watching the best of the Alex Jones Show, weekdays from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Central. Watch live at Infowars.com/show or become a member of InfoWarsNews.com and help us take resistance to the next level.
Everybody in the system stands to gain by being more free and more honest and not just living in denial. We have another report here out of Time magazine of all places, and I don't just read this in Time and say it must be true because it's in Time. Usually stuff's pretty deceptive in Time. They came out and admitted that fluoride is brain-damaging children in the U.S. and connected to ADHD. That came out actually on Friday, February 14th. That's a big deal. Children exposed to more brain-harming chemicals than ever before. We're going to talk about that in the next hour and open the phones up. Again, David Knight is here with us riding shotgun. I'm your host, Alex Jones. David, I've been kind of dominating things in between the reports. More points about what we're seeing. I mean, it's so frustrating to be informed. Like the Earth orbits the sun, but a lot of Americans don't think that, and they think we're liars.
I thought everything orbited around Washington, D.C.
Exactly. That's actually where it orbits. I mean, we're informed. It's not our opinion that we're right. That's why the evil people that run the government, both major parties, hate the real liberty movement and are demonizing it and preparing the military and police to fight it because we're the people that know what's going on. And if we get the word out to other folks, it's game over.
Well, that's the thing. They're trying to demonize it. They don't want anybody to, they want everyone to be afraid of guns and gun owners. And so they do what Eric Holder said that they would do.
Brainwashing.
They're constantly brainwashing people. We just had this case over in Beaumont, Texas, where this guy's got a gun store, and he was hassled going into the mall where his gun store was because he was open carrying, which is perfectly legal, open carrying a rifle in Texas. And so he had the police called on him. He got hassled by the mall, and so he moved to another location. As part of his grand opening, he's got a guy dressed up as a banana with an AK-47 over his back. And again, this guy gets hassled for
semi-auto. It was like a Mac 90.
Yeah, distracting traffic when down the street they've got a tax place that's got a Statue of Liberty out there. I don't get the connection with Statue of Liberty and taxes, but they're out there telling people that, you know, come here and get your taxes done. This guy was in front of his...
No, in Dallas and in Houston, other areas, they don't allow free speech if it's for liberty.
Yeah, exactly. It's selectively enforced. They say,
you know what I find is crazy?
Feet of a street.
It's the bureaucrats giving these orders, and I'm not kissing the police hind end here. It's the facts, being a talk show host for 19 years, being around the country. After the military, the police on average are probably some of the most conservative libertarian people. Well, polls show it, like 98% pro-gun in polls I've seen in national surveys. So they know, well, why are they following these illegal, unconstitutional orders? What are their unions doing? I mean, look, if they get rid of the Second Amendment, folks, everything else goes away.
Well, the interesting thing is that, you know, we are waking people up, but the mass of the public is also being exposed to this continuous brainwashing against gun owners, against the very sight of guns.
L.A. Times reported last year that gun crime plunges over 20 years, but public perceives higher gun crime.
Yeah. Well, we just had a Supreme Court, not a Supreme Court, an appeals court decision on Thursday.
Ninth Circuit. And in it, they quoted Heller versus D.C. Now, if you remember, Heller versus D.C. as well as McDonald. Was the off-duty cop who couldn't have a shotgun.
Right. And both of those established that you have an individual right to keep and bear arms. That's right. The right of the people is, in fact, an individual right, as if we didn't know that. But this court opinion, this circuit court opinion, quotes from Heller, and it also quotes from an 1840 decision, which says things like, the right guaranteed by the Constitution of the U.S. is calculated to incite men to a manly and noble defense of themselves if necessary and of their country without any tendency to secret advantage and unmanly assassination. So that's language from the 1840s that was quoted.
It's about having a nation of men.
Exactly.
Who can defend themselves, and then you have a professional police force for larger events.
That was language from the 1840s quoted in the Heller versus D.C. So it wasn't just that they were saying you have a right to own guns, but you got to keep them in the closet. You know, they said that you have the right to bear your arms. And so
read that again.
They said, this is a right guaranteed by the Constitution, which is calculated to incite men to manly and noble defense of themselves if necessary, self-defense, and of their country, without any tendency to secret advantages and unmanly assassination.
Yeah, so the general public is trained how to use guns from birth. So that when we had World War I or World War II, the Germans were pretty freaked out.
That's right.
Because especially people from the South or Texas or the West, which had been shooting since they were knee-high to a grasshopper. I've been shooting since I was 4 years old.
That's right.
And people say, how can you do that? Well, you train kids with a 410 with coffee cans, show them the power up front so that people understand don't touch it. By the time I was 6, I could shoot bullseye at 100 yards. And then by the time I was 10, but they're basically phasing all that out, killing that culture, making it specialized. And I watched last night Tom Hanks's movie, Captain Phillips, which they say is pretty accurate. And I've interviewed some of the captains that wrote books even before his case happened about how they go around the Horn of Africa and have no guns because governments want the monopoly. They can't even have handguns. If they'd had one deer rifle, they could have shot the 4 Somalis coming in on the back of their boat. They had to, and they almost fought them off with water hoses and flare guns. And, of course, they can be fined for using flare guns. So the ultimate, these guys can drive giant ships through canals and things that could kill thousands of people, just like an airline pilot can be trusted to fly this giant weapon, this giant missile. But, oh, they can't have a gun in the cockpit.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting to see this quoted. This is an 1840 decision that they quoted in the circuit court. And they also quoted Heller. And Heller was very good. Heller said this codifies a pre-existing right. In other words, Heller versus D.C., the Supreme Court said, you don't get your rights from the government. The government is simply recognizing inherent rights that you already have, which
government's supposed to work as a guarantor.
Right. And so we've got some good decisions being made here by the courts.
Exactly. That's what I want to say. There are a lot of good people in the system, in the corporations, in the private businesses. I'm not saying everybody's bad. But the really evil people, the offshore globalists, look at Goldman Sachs, J.P. Morgan, all the regular suspects. Go look at who funds the anti-gun groups.
Oh, yeah.
Go look at who funds open borders. Go look at who funds teaching kids how to be, transgender at age 5.
Well, you've got Bloomberg putting together mayors against illegal guns. And, of course, we see that even though the Constitution says that you have these rights, even though the Supreme Court says you have...
They've ignored it for 5 years.
The mayor's still infringing on people's rights, absolutely ignoring the Constitution.
Courts ruled they can't do the stop and frisk without warrants.
That's right. And they don't care because this is a group that's in charge of the cities, the big cities like New York and Washington and Chicago, and even some of the small cities where they're just a criminal group of thugs that don't have any legitimate authority because they've put themselves above the law.
By the way, I've protested people like Bloomberg, people like Rudolph Giuliani, the IRS commissioner, you name it, our reporters have. And they will literally send thugs up at a press conference. And we're just asking a polite question, or even before we have, and say, hey, get out of here, and grab you by the arm. Get out of here, I'm going to arrest you. And we have to say, we have this on video. We've played many of them. No, First Amendment. Then they back off. But, I mean, you deal with these people. I mean, it's like out of a gangster movie.
Oh, yeah.
And they're that close, folks. They've already signed us on to, according to the USA Today, 1.5 quadrillion in derivatives. To put that in perspective, the national debt's, what, 19 trillion now?
Yeah, I don't know.
So the real supposed debt they've signed us on to, supposedly our debt's 19 trillion, which is still just gargantuan. And is millions of dollars per citizen. Last time I saw a number, I think it's 1,300,000. But the point is that now they've signed us on to these foreign... These are literal mafias. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. And one of the scenarios that they train on where they come after the Tea Party and they come after conservatives is after a meltdown of the economy. And that's what...
Because we're going to say, don't take our 401ks.
That's right.
Don't take our IRAs. They're saying they're going to take them.
Yes, and we see in this article today about Slick Login, this is a company that was bought by Google, where you can essentially log into the internet just by placing your iPhone next to your computer. It's so convenient.
And it uses subaudible tones.
That's right. And And part of that demonstration, what they're showing is that this is very valuable for banks, because banks can say that you can only do transactions if you're in certain geographical locations, like maybe your home or your office. At first, it starts out as a security issue, but then they can use it for currency control, because we live in a prison planet, don't we, Alex? And it's like, well, if you've got a maximum security prison, that's one of the worst prisons you can live in. And they're constantly selling us this under the name of security.
Now you can watch The Alex Jones Show live as it happens at Infowars.com/show.
You'll find links to all of our content there and a free 15-day trial for Prison Planet TV.
More than 60 movies and documentaries all in one place at Infowars.com/show.